Hello and welcome. At the moment we have our editor and yeah, it's not really doing much, is it? We can scroll through the types of brushes that we want to drop, and it's populating this property editor here. We can move the camera around, but otherwise like nothing's happening. So in this session I want to set up so that we can drop walls, floors, ceilings, objects. And in the session after this, we'll implement saving and loading maps. There's a fair bit involved here, so we'll just take it one step at a time. First of all, I will grab a bunch of textures. These are, I believe, a bunch of old like Quake textures, but anyway, there they are. These we'll be using for our doors, floors, and walls, and everything. So I guess the first thing we'll do is we will add these. Now we could add them up above, but then the program will complain. So the program will complain that we can't really load images until a valid Qt program is running, and for that reason I'm going to put all of this inside the editor class, and we'll refer to that later. There's a lot of functions here. Anyway, we'll go to the initializer for the editor, and then down below here we will construct our images. We'll do that here. What we're doing is we're loading each of these textures, converting them to a pix map, and that's it. That's all we need to draw images. Okay, I'm going to start sort of, what will we do first? Oh, I know, the property editor. So when we run this, I'm going to set this up so that we see an image of the texture that we want to drop down for our wall, and we can also cycle through the different types of images. So in order to do this, we're going to need some variables. We have brush index. Let's set a wall index. Okay, we have that set up. Great. Then I'm going to make functions so that, well, I'll have buttons to cycle through my wall types, but I want to create those underlying functions to cycle through. I know, a lot of copy pasting, but it's very repetitive, and I could definitely generalize this a little bit more, but let's take a look through it. Hopefully it makes sense. So this is saying I'm on the wall panel, and I cycle to the left of my texture. So I decrease my wall index under mod the number of walls, and then I repopulate my property panel. So just clear everything and draw the new wall texture that I'm going to drop down. Just double checking through here. We do the same thing with doors, same thing with floors. It's, yeah, same sort of stuff. I think that's okay. I am using the same textures for the floors and ceilings. There's no reason to do it one way or the other. That's fine. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create some classes which will be used to put inside of the type selector, not type selector, the property editor. So what do I want? I want a texture for the wall, and I also want some horizontal buttons to cycle through those. Let's start with the texture. So I've got this general image frame, and we construct it for a given width and height. Also pass in a QPix image, QPix map, and we store that, set the size, and then in the paint event, we get the rectangle representing the canvas space. We get the painter, and we tell the painter to draw self-image inside that rectangle. It works pretty well. Next thing we'll need is a widget to sort of hold this, as well as those horizontal buttons. For this, we'll make another class called Image Selector. It takes width, height, also takes a reference to that image, which will be passed along to the image canvas, image frame. So we go along, we set the height, that image frame, we're going to allocate just a little bit of the height down below to store the image. And yeah, so we have a vertical layout because we'll have the texture and the stuff below it. And then that left and right arrow will be within a horizontal layout. And each of these widgets, I'm storing them as class variables so I can connect them to actions later on. The actions kind of originate from the editor class, and those actions are connected to the sort of terminal widgets in the tree, if you will. So this is all good. Let's use these to create a, let's populate the wall properties. At the moment, we're just putting in a label. Let's change that. Okay, so we make this image selector class, give it a size of 200 by 200, that's fine. Put in the appropriate wall image, and then connect the clicked action to the left wall and right wall properties. Add it to the property editor. So we can run this, and now this is loading those images from our files. We can cycle through, and this has got all the images and they are all looking good. We can go backwards as well. Awesome. So we can select an image, drop it down. Now let's set up the other property selectors. So we want to change all of these. Maybe not player properties. I'm happy with that for now. Okay, so again, we're doing the same thing with door properties. Just putting in the door image, connecting it to the left and right door functions. That's looking good. Same thing for floor properties. Again, I guess we could be a little more clever about how we set this up, but I mean, the point of a tool is to be simple and useful, and that is what this is achieving. So we go doors, yep, we just got one door image. Floors, we got a whole bunch of them. Let's say we're on the blue one right now. Ceilings, we're on a different one, and when we go back, it still remembers exactly which of these we were on. Awesome. So now I want to set it up so that A, I can kind of detect where on the grid my mouse is clicking, and then B, I am adding and subtracting, adding and removing objects, and then C, I'm rendering them. Let's do the adding and removing. That's handled by the map class. So in the model view hierarchy, this is sort of my my model. This is my database. So for instance, if we're looking at wall, let's give this an add wall function. Now, the wall is in the geometry, and it's a dictionary. So I'm going to say the key for the dictionary is the position. That's a tuple of 2 integers, x, y, and x, y in the grid. And the value will be a number. So it'll be, 0, 1, 2, 3. It's a texture index, an index of the wall textures. So what I'm doing here is I'm inserting this. If it's not in the dictionary, it will be inserted. If it is in the dictionary, it will overwrite the existing entry. And then I'm saying, well, if I lay down a wall and there's a floor on that position, then that floor should be removed. Same with ceiling. And if there's a player, yeah, the player should be removed. The wall overwrites things. So then we can look at those remove things. Let's remove a wall. Now, walls are stored in the geometry dictionary, which stores walls and doors. So what we're saying is for a given position, First of all, we test if that position, if that position is in the dictionary. In other words, if there's an entry in there, if there's a wall occupying that space. If it is, we pop it. Now, when you pop a key from a dictionary, that removes it completely from the dictionary. So it just removes the wall object. And in a similar fashion, we can define functions for all of the other operations. Theme of today is it's very repetitive. Okay, so let's step through it. Add wall, we've looked at that already. Add door, it's very much the same. I've only got one door, I'm just going to keep one door. So I'm going to use a D to represent the door instead of an index, instead of an integer. So that works the same way. If I want to add floor, well, the only thing that floor overwrites is the wall. Floor will not overwrite a ceiling. That makes sense. And if there's a floor here already, it will be overwritten. Also, floor does not overwrite the player, because a player and a floor object can exist in the same space. Similarly for a ceiling and a wall cannot exist in the same place, but it can exist along with everything else. Similarly, a player will just overwrite a wall if there's a wall there at the moment. Also, for the player variable, I'm storing a position. So it's not a player object, it's just a tuple, it's just a position. So it's the same sort of thing here as you would imagine for remove geometry, floor, and ceiling. I guess the only other one is player, because player will be a tuple. So first of all, we check if we try to remove player, but there actually is no player, that's fine. But then if there is a player, we want to check that the position matches the position that we're trying to remove. Okay, and then no worries. So this is all good. We've got functions to add and remove things. The next thing we need to do is add a function to handle a clicking on the level. So it's not quite as simple as simply connecting a symbol, although having said that, it's not much more complicated than that either. This is done with an event. An event is a function which is triggered at certain points. So first of all, I'm going to make a function to handle a click event. Oh yeah, we should also define this. Let's define this. So we're going to define a bunch of constants to represent types of brushes. We have that there. That's all good. Okay. We can give these any values we want. Anyway, so what we'll do, first of all, is this. This is a mouse event which inherits from a single point event. In other words, we can get its position. That position is a Q point. We can get the X and Y components. Oh, that should be divide, shouldn't it? That's okay, because we're still casting it to an integer, so that's fine. We also need to take into account the camera position, because as we scroll the map around, if I click somewhere, I want the offset of the camera to be added to that to put it into proper world space. So we can call action button, and this returns a mouse button event. I'm just going to cast that to a string and check that it matches. I'm being a little dodgy here, so I'm just saying that if a click event happens, it has to either be left or right. This isn't quite true, because we could have like mouse scroll events, for instance, might trigger this, I'm not sure, but this works for now. Like I said, tool just has to be simple and useful enough. So if a left click has occurred, then we will be adding things, and if a right click occurs, then we'll be removing things. This view type is used by views, so every view has a view type. The first view, in fact, if I run this, when I create this and configure it, the first view will be view type geometry. So if I click inside this view, I should only be producing walls and doors. I should not be able to have this walls here set up and then click here and produce a wall. It should just be in the geometry pane. It's a little weird, but yeah, it is what it is. So we just go through all of these if statements, just checking that, yeah, we're going to draw a wall and our brush index is set to 0. In other words, our editor is configured so that we are in wall draw mode, if that makes sense. So what I mean is, if I run this, this is my draw mode here. Here my brush is 0, brush is 1, brush is 2, 3, 4. Anyway, as usual, link in the description, you can check out the code. Now we can close that, and we really want to kind of use it. So the way we can use it is we'll go to the, where are we? The map, where are we? Yeah, the map container. I'm going to create these things. I'm going to configure them with their types. So view type, not geometry, floor. And things. Awesome. Cool. So then I'll go to the constructor for the map view and I'll extract that information. Awesome. Cool. So we're storing that. And then I'm going to make the paint event. I'm going to give it a few sub steps. So at this point, we've pretty much filled the screen with black. I want to go self draw walls. I'm going to pass in the painter object. I'm going to pass in the camera position. Okay, let's have a look at this draw walls function. So we take this information, we want to loop through. So when we go loop through items, the way this works, this is a dictionary and it gives us the key and the value in each step of the loop. So the key is the tuple, the position, and the value is the entry. That's the texture index. Let's import GUI rectangle. Awesome. So what are we doing? Well, yeah, we got, oh, wrong one. All right, down here. Okay, so we make a rectangle. We want to get the position, X and Y, extract those, get them relative to the camera position, and then this is a grid coordinate. So everything here needs to be multiplied by 24 to put it into actual pixel coordinates. Then the next two here are the width and height of the rectangle. They'll both be set to 24. Then we want to check, we're only going to draw these texture images if we are in a geometry view. Otherwise, yeah, we can still draw things, but they'll be different. So because the geometry blocks off everything, walls, ceilings, and like players and things, then everything else will get a red rectangle, indicating that that space has been blocked off. Now I am getting a little ahead of myself. This will work, but we need to actually create things. And in order to do that, we need to define the event which will run on a mouse press. So this is when we draw, when we make this, it has a paint event by default because it's a widget, and widgets also have mouse press events. All this does is triggers the parent's click event, which we defined previously. That's this one here. And it passes in the mouse event which occurred and the type of view that we have. So we can run this, and here we are in walls. We'll click here and that makes a wall and it blocks off everything else. We can right click, that will delete the wall, and we can also move around and our whole view moves around. So it's okay, we can go off the screen, that's perfectly fine. Okay, now let's go ahead and create the other functions that we'll need. So that's walls, as well as floors, and you see where we're getting at here. So we only want to draw a full floor texture if we're dropping down like players or the floor textures. Otherwise, now we don't draw a red rectangle on the ceilings because walls do not block off ceilings, but they will block off walls. You know what I'm saying? Floors don't block off ceilings, but they will block off walls and doors. So we'll fill in with a red rectangle on the geometry view. And yeah, I'm just rehashing. It's the same sort of stuff. But we don't draw ceilings when we're dropping down the player. And at the moment, we just have, where are we? The player position. So we'll just do a single ellipse there with a P in it for the player. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So again, to put it all together, can grab a wall. Okay, that's looking good. We can also overwrite this. So we can say, okay, drop a door in there, or right click to delete and then drop a door. That's fine. Can put some floor in here. Okay, a click here is not going to create it. I need to be clicking in the, what's going on here? Let's stop. We'll get back to that. Ceilings, do they work? No, they don't. I remember what I've done. I've forgotten to actually call those events. So yeah, this will draw walls, ceilings, and things. Okay, let's get back to it. So, where was I? We'll draw the walls. Now, if I want to put a floor, again, I can't click here, but I can click here. As you can see, it marks off on the geometry that something has been put there. And if we drop a wall in here, that'll overwrite this. And it also gives us a nice visual representation here. But it doesn't give us anything on ceiling. So we pop to ceilings. We can drop that down and then create a player somewhere. Doesn't matter. Okay, so yeah, there we have it. This is looking pretty good. Next thing we'll want to do is save and load files, and that'll be the next installment. I'll see you then. Hope you had fun. I'll see you later. Bye.